Welcome, everybody, to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette. I'm so glad you're with us today to stay curious. We're going to talk about Apollo 17, 52 years ago. Gino and Jack were ready to go right out of this doorway. They're getting ready right now, 52 years ago in space history, for their third and final spacewalk. They're going to be out for 7 hours, so I'm going to show you where to keep up with it up there. Beautiful, beautiful photograph. Marty Winkle, going to say hi to my partner for almost 1,190 episodes of Stay Curious. That is something, Marty, that you're very familiar with, LEM 9 of the Grumman Aerospace Company. What's it look like to you there 52 years ago?
Was that limb 9 or limb 12?
Huh?
That's that's limb 12.
Yeah, LEM 12. What did I say?
9.
9. Smacked me up against the side of the head. I've been saying 12 several times. 9 is the one that you do a docent tour of. That's fabulous. And as close as I've seen, this picture is about as close as I've seen LEM 9 out at Kennedy Space Center Visitors Complex. So glad that Marty worked as an electrical engineer. He's very humble about it, but he's one of our national treasures that helped us go to the moon as a young man, and then spent 30 more years with the launch process services of the shuttle industry. So, Marty, 52 years ago, I know you don't wax poetic about much, but what a fabulous picture there. And to see that that's the door they came out of. And I see the Inconel and the Kapton foil on there. And this is before docking. And what was the name of this lunar module, Marty, to warm up that UCAC family microphone?
I believe it was Challenger.
Yep. And the command module? America.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say that.
Yeah. Okay. America. Do you know, this isn't Marty's question. He's got another good one for y'all today. But do you know the other name that they were thinking of using? The choice they had was Challenger or blank. Do you know that one, Steve Jokums? Chime in there if you do. Hello to my daughter Jessie and my granddaughters McKinley and Macy. Hello there, girls. Hope you're behaving, Mommy. Steve Jokums is up there. Pretty cold up there, it looks, Steve, on the Michigan, Lake Michigan up there. Dean Babcock's up in Illinois. Hi to him. Gary Gerald's in Georgia. Tom Usiak's in Pennsylvania. So the usual Stay Curious stellar family is showing up here today. And you're going to enjoy, I think, me looking up some really obscure anecdotes you might not know about or remember about Apollo 17, the last lunar voyage of mankind's greatest adventure. And that's something that's the foundation of the American Space Museum. If you don't know about us, for over 25 years, we've been preserving the birth of America's space age here in what I call its delivery room, Brevard County, Florida. Truly unique spot. We're just 9 miles. Marty and I are sitting 10 miles away from Kennedy Space Center launch pads in Cape Canaveral, maybe a mile further from us there, across the Indian River. So come visit us. It's a beautiful town, Titusville. There's all kinds of things you can do within 50 miles of here, from Universal, Disney, to enjoying the world's speedway Daytona there. So pitch for our Chamber of Commerce that I belong to there. So Gary Gerald, wow. Gary Gerald got the right answer. Heritage. Good for you, Gary. It was going to be called Heritage. And Gino thought Challenger was more of a apropos moniker for the final mission. And I'm going to do the words of Harrison Schmitt here when he said when he walked on the moon there. So yeah, it's only 20 degrees, Steve Jokum says, up at Fox Lake, Illinois. It's just chilly there, Marty. Good Lord, people would be dropping from in their tracks like the iguanas from trees in Miami if it got down to 20 down here. But glad to see everyone today. Doug Forrest, good to see you. I'm going to be talking about some of Doug's artwork, and Chris Callie and Ron Woods. We're going to share at the end of the program here some of the work that they've done. And you're welcome there, Doug. give him a plug before Christmas. He's a very talented artist and focuses on Apollo, uh, mostly pen and ink or pencil. So, anybody had an off day today like me? Oh my gosh. Yes, this is Friday the 13th, Friday, December 13. And there's a few superstitions about that abound. Of course, I made some notes on it, and don't here I've got them right here. I'm gonna put my glasses on now because I'm going to do quite a bit of reading. So I know Neil 1030 is going to be on there keeping me right. And let me put my spectacles on here. Uh, Friday the 13th, Marty. Are you superstitious about that?
No,
Nope, not at all.
no, not at all.
Yeah, I'm not really, but did you know many tall buildings and hotels have no 13th floor as they intentionally skip it? Some hotels, some hospitals don't have a room 13. And throughout the years, some presidents have considered the number 13 to be unlucky, while others have not. Woodrow Wilson thought it was his lucky number. And people are going, he was a president? Woodrow Wilson, yes, he was during World War One. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt, three-term president, our only one, would not travel on the 13th and would never have a meal with 13 guests attending. All right. The unlucky 13 number theory might come from there's 12 months in the year, 12 hours on a clock, 12 signs of the zodiac. So 13 was considered irregular and therefore unlucky. And why Friday? Yeah, there's many reasons about Friday. There's sort of like the Ides of March when in March, it wasn't on the 13th as the 15th when Caesar got murdered. Beware the Ides of March. But Friday settles into some superstitions I'm not even going to get into. And I can't forget for you Hollywood fans out there, when I Googled it to find a Friday the 13th slide to show, like I did here, all I got was this character in a hockey mask, Marty, with an axe in his hand, okay? And I forgot about, Friday the 13th, the 1980 horror movie that spawned numerous sequels and remakes and spin-offs and blah, 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 costumes for Halloween, is an enduring symbol of terror, that Jason Voorhees guy. So there, about Friday the 13th. Friday is what I say.
Yeah, I don't think there's a row 13 on an airline, on a plane.
There's no row 13 on an airline on a plane?
Nope.
Oh, I didn't know that. And let's see, Dave Stange says his parents were married on Friday the 13th. It lasted over 50 years. Good number for them. Carlton Bailey's there at his Museum of Godzilla. And yes, we're going to have a good time. We got a nighttime and a daytime launch in the next couple days here. And it's almost full moon too, is what my daughter Jessie says. I didn't throw in talk like an astronomer, but the moon is 13 days old, going to be 14 days old tomorrow. So, wow. And Dave Stange's got his Christmas decorations up. So, let's plug on through here and get you all some good information. But, I love this picture. This is Jeff Bezos and his CEO, whose name I forget. I want to say Lamb, but that's incorrect. Looking at the New Glenn rocket on the pad at pad 36, and you can see it from the beach. I'm going to go out there and try and see it tonight or tomorrow night from the beach out there. When's it going to be launched? Well, nobody's saying yet. But when Carlton Bailey texts me that he's seen the range is now closed for the 15th or 16th, then it's a go. You have to close the Atlantic Ocean to any traffic out there for at least a day ahead of time to allow boats to get in and so forth. So that's Bezos on the right with his bald head. This is about 4 years behind, okay, and but that's the way startups are. And Marty and I know billions and billions of dollars have been spent there. And I wanted to give a special shout out and hello to Sharon Rodriguez. Hello, Sharon. Hope you're having a great Friday and it's not too much of a 13 for you today like mine's been. But Sharon Rodriguez is an awesome volunteer at the U.S. Space Force Sand Space History museum. She's responsible for the gift shop with Deborah there, and a lot of the volunteers, and everyone loves Sharon Rodriguez. And she's always watching Stay Curious, though she's not a person that comments or lets you know she's watching, Marty. She's like you out there, just enjoying it, and appreciate her support. And I know, Sharon, you tell people to stay curious, and God bless you for that. All right. All right. Here is, we're going to look back at the last humans to walk on the moon. You've got a fender bender on the moon. You've got orange soil, and you got some beautiful artwork that were from our friends, including Ron Woods right there. That's Ronnie's watercolor of the famous photo of Gene on the moon. And we want to wish y'all a happy holiday, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, whatever Yuletide you spend, Kwanzaa with all the beautiful colors, or Festivus for the rest of us. But we wish you a Merry Christmas and a Happy Holiday from the bottom of our hearts. We're going to take some days off, Christmas week and New Year's week, and we won't have Stay Curious programs. That'll just give me and Marty a break to re-energize and me to get some new graphics together that we've wanted to do and so forth. So Nick Sedler's got the last words there of Gino on the moon. Well, as we leave the moon, we leave as we came, and God willing, as we shall return with peace and hope for all mankind. But boy, Gino sure didn't think it's going to take 50 years to go back. And so, little Santa having some fun with some aliens. And Merry Christmas from the Spaceport of Florida. This is a Don McKay artwork that was so popular down here. He was an artist for kids, and I'll probably reprise a program on Don next week. And I might put some stuff on Facebook, but not YouTube, from our past shows when we did it in the conference room, Marty. All right, let's get into Apollo 17. And Sharon Rodriguez knows that I love this book. They sell at their gift shop, Mission Handbook. And I'm going to tell you what this mission patch means. This was designed by the great Robert McCall, the great space artist Robert McCall, really a contemporary of Paul Calley. They were good friends, and his son Chris Calley is a partner with our museum now and a fabulous artist. But this is what Robert McCall collaborated with the astronauts, and Gene Cernan, Ron Evans, and Harrison Jack Schmitt. And this is what they came up with. The insignia is dominated by the image of Apollo, the Greek sun god. Suspended, actually, it's the Roman sun god. Greek is Zeus. All right, or it's the other way around. But anyway, Apollo is a sun god. Suspended in space is a contemporary design of an American eagle. The red bars of the eagle's wings represent the bars in the United States flag. The three white stars symbolize the crew. The space background features the moon, the planet Saturn, and a spiral galaxy. The moon is partially overlaid by the eagle's wing, suggesting this is a celestial body that man has visited and, in a sense, conquered. The thrust of the eagle and the gaze of Apollo to the right and towards Saturn and the galaxy is meant to imply that man's goals in space will someday include the planets and perhaps the stars. The colors of the emblem are red, white, and blue, the colors of our flag. And with the addition of gold on Apollo, that symbolizes the golden age of spaceflight that will begin with this Apollo 17 lunar landing. This emblem was designed by Robert McCall, and just a beautiful, beautiful rendition of that. Very beautiful Apollo statue there, modeled after one of the classic Roman statues of 2,000 years ago. So here are the astronauts. Harrison Jack Schmitt on the left, Ron Evans standing up there. He orbited the moon 70-some times, taking pictures. A lot of them didn't, it wasn't like Apollo 15 when Al Worden was specifically scouting their site on the moon called Descartes. All right. and Descartes was a Greek philosopher that of some repute on there. Of course, there's Gene sitting down on the lunar rover where he drove. How many miles? Good segue there, huh, Marty? There's your question.
Yeah, you did good, Mark. What was the furthest distance Gene and Jack drove from the lunar module number 12 named Challenger? How far did they travel
Yeah,
from the lunar module?
not total. The total was about 22 miles on 3 trips there. And amazing, this is an electric car, all right? And it got about 10 miles an hour. And there is the lunar profile we don't want to forget. You get towards the end of the program and you forget who brought you to the dance. And this is the lunar orbit rendezvous that was a controversial choice at the time. A man named Humboldt from Iowa, physicist, figured out that this would be the least uh, expense of fuel and so forth on there. So lunar landing profile, the moon, of course, is moving around the Earth and isn't at the same spot, nor is the sky after 3 days. I mean, the lunar landscape 3 days later, the shadows got shorter for Gene. And there's the night launch, the only night launch. We had well documented this week with some guests, including Daryl Higginbotham, who remarked about how he was in the launch control center when it went off. Marty, you also commented about how it really turned night into day, Marty, right? Reprise that again for us on
Yeah,
this
I mean,
show.
it definitely, I have a hard time saying it turned it into day because you still had a black sky, you still had black all around you from nighttime, but it did light up the sky. It did have windows rattle. And I think back then we had, and maybe getting this confused with Space Shuttle, we had car alarms going off. So
Yeah,
it's
car
a
alarms
beautiful
going
sight.
off. Yeah, that would have been novel there. Uh, uh, so probably had more car alarms in that 3.5 years from 69
Yeah.
to 72 there. So there is a beautiful pencil sketch on the spot that Paul Cali, renowned artist that created the famous stamp, Man on the Moon stamp for the U.S. Postal Service. This was done with his son Chris by his side. Chris then was, yeah, he was a teenager. He wasn't a teenager. He was a preteen. I think Chris is maybe 8 years old, and remembers his dad on the station wagon sketching this as fast as it went up there. And man, that's hard to do. Make the white there out of all that black, but the rocket in there, beautiful, beautiful. There's a firing room access to Apollo 17, the final one. Look at the engines there at the bottom. This is the 511th permanent firing room access there to some space worker. And those sell on our auction and eBay. On eBay, I would put $50 at that, but on Apollo 11, I'd put $100 and take the bidding from there. And again, there's the crew, the night launch, the patch, and most of the famous space photos in print. That is, and Harrison Schmitt actually took that picture on the way back from the moon before they went 30,000 miles into that atmosphere. The Africa continent and Antarctica visible there, and a piece of the Middle East there. So 3 continents there on this beautiful blue marble. Could you imagine taking that TWA bus tour and seeing an astronaut on a rover running around there practicing? And that's what they saw. That's obviously Gene with the stripes on his. No, I don't know if that is Gene. Don't see a stripe on a helmet. And pilot never drove it. Always the commander drove the car while the pilot acted as a road guide, a map. They had the map and had to shout out where stuff was. So that's how they did it on all 3 rovers. Was they let uh, the commander was the driver and the pilot was always uh, looking at the map, saying where they go. We got some good guesses of under 5 miles. Steve Jokums has got it to the kilometer, 7.6. 4.5 miles for Gary Gerald, and Dean Babcock thinks about 4.5 miles. Long way from home, is all I can say. So here's a chart of the moon that you're going to see tonight. Okay. So when you look at the moon tonight, you're going to look first to the one of the edge that has the circular sea of chrism, mare chrism on there. Look for that. Three Russian lunar modules landed, lunar rovers landed there. And two of those, like Luna 24, brought back a couple ounces of lunar soil from there. These are very complex lunar spacecraft of the 70s, all right, late 70. In fact, Luna 16, I think, was on the way to the moon when Apollo 11, and it crashed when Apollo 11 was on the moon. So there you see the landing sites. So basically across the equator, you got three of them. And then when you look just below center, a little bit to the right, that's where Apollo 16 is. Apollo 17 and 15 were on the north part of the moon. And 15 particularly went to the highest away from the equator latitude and needed more fuel than most of them traditionally did for that maneuver. Mare Imbrium and Mare Serenitatis and Mare Crisium are circled. Do you get it? These were asteroids that hit the moon while the moon was very young, okay, and like in its first half billion years. And when it hit there, it threw ejecta out all over the moon, all right? And that rock from inside the moon and the lava that was there cooling down is what Apollo 17 was trying to get from the Mare Imbrium impact, where Apollo 15 was on the shores. So they know that stuff flipped over there. After these giant impacts, the lunar lava from the center oozed out. And it is the weight of like 10 weight oil. It's not like molasses, it's like 10 weight motor oil. And it oozed out because of the gravity of the Earth pulling it in as the moon froze in its spin and one face kept there. And then it got cratered over and over and over again. There's no traditional mountains on the moon caused by tectonic plates. All this mountainous area, the white areas, are caused by the impact craters piling up the debris on top of each other. So that's why 17 was chosen, a geologic mission. They practiced at Big Bend National Park in Texas, where I've done stargazing. Right there, the arrow in the center there is the lunar module. They were looking for Camelot. Henry was another crater. They came over this North Massif and came down these highlands and then plopped right down in an area where they thought lava had spewed around there. And see these tails right there, that white tailing stuff? That is where they drove to get what they thought was debris from the Mare Imbrium crash 1,000 miles away. See Imbrium there in Apollo 17? That's what they're trying to get was debris excavated out from Mare Imbrium. Each Apollo mission after 11 and 12 had a geological puzzle they wanted to solve. And long story short, that is some stuff from the Mare Imbrium impact crater there. So it was a fascinating, just pinpoint landing. There again is showing you, actually, this should be upside down. See where these tailings are right there? They're at the bottom over here. So I forgot to invert that up there. But you get the idea where these are big clumps. Those in here. These are actual not mountains. These are like a big piece of a snowball that fell a foot away from where you hit your brother with the snowball. Okay, Marty, you remember that? You saw plenty of snow when you were growing up, right?
Sure did.
Your brothers hitting each other with snowballs, and yeah, this would be a piece that landed on the porch, but it stayed intact, and they landed in between all this. Isn't that amazing to think about? And then for another 3 billion years, or it's been inundated. We have, because of the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, exact photos of where these landed. They'll even get better as more companies put cameras on orbiters around the moon. But there's Challenger's descent stage. You can see the lunar rover tracks, some of the trudging of the astronauts in their shoes. We're going to talk about how 3 days on the surface affected those boots, and a decision that Gene Cernan made to bring the boots back. The only time we did that. of the 6 landings. The Apollo Lunar Science Experiment Package, LSEP on the left, and the lunar, where's the geophone rock is over there on the left. That's where they planted some pyrotechnics to be exploded after they left. Lunar rovers over here by my head. So when you see liftoff from the moon, all right, they have live footage of that. That is from the, that's where the lunar rovers took the picture, and we'll see a picture of that. If you're eat up with it like I am, and many of you, go to Flickr and Project Apollo Archive. Every frame of picture taken on the moon is there, all right, including the bad ones. And I'm going to enjoy showing you a few of those. Let's see, I wanted to get a couple other points across before I go there. They, of course, trained on the lunar surface. And they're big. They were also, Harrison Schmitt was the only geologist to go to the moon. He trained the early geologists. He was, in effect, running the mission from the moon by his observations, telling Gene where to drive to, because I see this here. Now, after 3 or 4 years of geologic training, particularly at Big Bend National Park and other places, I know they went up to somewhere in Iceland that mimicked some of the moon's surface. The other astronauts, geologists or not, surely gained a great knowledge of the moon. So, Marty, I want to, there's the Apollo archives. Before I get into that, I'm going to throw this out at you. Apollo 16 was in April 1972, correct?
Yeah.
Yep. So we waited 8 months to launch the next one, when the cadence was almost every 4 months for sure. Why did we make, there's a reason why we may have waited 8 months until December. Have you ever heard that reason? Was it ever the rumors in your work area there?
No, I don't recall anything, Mark. There may have been, but I don't recall.
Well, how about this? Politics. President Nixon was scheduled for re-election November 72. They think part of the reason why Apollo 17 was scheduled for December was not to make it fall after, was to make it fall after the presidential election, ensuring that if there was a disaster, it would have no effect on Nixon's re-election campaign. Now, that's just I'm not saying that's true. I'm being political in a way of that's just an observation, that this was the last one. There was no pressure. But did you feel like 8 months was a long time between 16 and, after all, we did 11 and 12 in July, August, September, October, November, 4 months apart.
Yeah, I don't recall, Mark, but what you're saying sounds
Okay.
familiar. I don't know if I heard that during that time frame or maybe after. Dave Stang is agreeing with you, though. He says
Okay.
Nixon wanted after the election.
Whether you're Democrat or Republican, if it was a Democratic president in there, I would say the same thing. That might be a little bit prudent, because you're going to get the blame when you got all the credit and took it away from President Kennedy by your name. Nixon's on the moon on the plaques, not President Kennedy. In fact, I'm hard pressed, any of you Democrats out there, I'd like to find where Kennedy's name is referenced on the surface of the moon, Marty. I've never found it, and I've really looked for it. There's nothing that says, thank you, President Kennedy, we did it, to my knowledge. So some of you, either political party, I'm just saying, that's how things are. That's why there was no 18, 19, and 20, was Nixon canceled it in favor of the space shuttle program that he highly oversold to the American public. Yes.
Yeah, Dean Babcock is asking, I've read that not all of the material brought back on Apollo 17 has been opened. Is this true?
Dean Babcock, that's a very intelligent observation, because he's right. There are rocks that have not been opened up from Apollo 11. Why? Well, Look at how in 50 years our technology has changed. All right. Didn't have these 50 years ago. All right. So if you're analyzing moon rocks with the highest scientific instruments of 1972, think of what those scientific instruments look like in 2024, 50 years later, 52 years later. So now you get it. They save some of it for posterity so that better equipment can be analyzed again. Another great analogy is my beautiful daughter or my beautiful sister, Sherry Matthews in Texas, had her on the show when she was visiting recently. She learned ultrasound in 1970s, all right, and was an ultrasound technician. And then almost 40 years of ultrasound technology, she remarks about how it's just so changed. They would see things in the early babies in ultrasound that they didn't know what was going on because they'd never seen this activity or this type of something on the head, and then the next 3 months later it's gone, just part of the growth of the fetus. Over time and decades they know what they're looking at. So that's why some things have not been opened up. They open up the most interesting things that they think they can get, regular 20th century type of data from, but they saved a lot of it for the 20th century there. So getting a call from Arkansas. All right. Not sure what that's about, but that could be my friend uh, Keith Sewell calling me during the show. Keith is going to be teaching astronomy at one of the Arkansas schools there. So congratulations on that, Keith. Mitch Rothman's joined us. Hi, Mitch. I know he's eating up some of this stuff, and so let's get to this. I'm big on the Apollo archives. You all know that, okay? Because I'm a photographer like Tom and Mark Usiak. And so you go and you can see anything, and you can even see the the trail, the leader tape that they put. This is film. Oh my gosh, have I got my film handy here? I should have got that out here at the last moment. Usually I have a roll. I do. I have a roll of celluloid film here for those of you that really, and I know some of you don't know what I'm talking about. My daughter does, as young as she is, because she's seen Daddy process this in front of her eyes. This is where the image is, and this is just plastic in the sprocket holes for the camera, and that's putting highlighted crystals on there. All right, that's your CCD chip, so to speak, and you got 36 exposures on a long roll, 24. That's it right there. That's the whole roll of film right there, and 24 exposures. Well, you see, they put a test strip up there to balance the colors and everything in the lab. This is a lab thing to Marty for the lab to put on there. So it even says what it is, the date. I love that kind of stuff on there. So there's even the first picture they took on this magazine that they call Hasselblad rolls of film. And I'm rewinding this. The first picture had a little bit of light exposed to it from this. All right, they've even got those are studio lights there to get the accuracy of the colors. So it got a little bit of flash there. All right, but they took several pictures of this, and there's a typical picture, another one that got flashed. All right, at the beginning of the film roll. Somehow there you see Challenger Way on the left. This is where they put the ALSEP out at. So I showed you a picture of that, where that's at. So that's about 200 yards away, a couple football fields. There's some pictures of Jack and Ron in the lunar module there, and a picture of Gino in the LEM. They took quite a few pictures of themselves in there, but they didn't focus for themselves a lot of times. So you see them out of focus on these short. Is that the command module? Ah, Marty corrected me there. That is the LEM. All right.
No, command module.
I mean the command module. Yeah, command module. Yeah, I guess you can tell because you'd see the window above his arm, probably, huh, Marty? And other things.
Yeah.
What tipped you off?
Everything. I mean,
everything.
It just was not the lunar module.
He spent hundreds of hours inside that thing, folks, even when it was on the pad. So just thought I'd throw that in. A lot of pictures like that. Look at those checklists. Okay, now when you own a coin, Marty, and I've got one in my pocket that has material flown to the surface of the moon, metal flown to the surface of the moon, or in the in the command module. You know where that metal came from on some things?
Yeah, some came from that binder, the metal in the binder.
The metal in the three-ring binder there. Somebody bought that, clipped off one of those rings, threw it in the vat of bubbling metal, and cast some beautiful coins out of it. And that makes it official. It has to have so many grains per whatever ounce to be official. But that's where they get some of this metal. I always wondered what kind of they take some blocks of metal with them and with a note that says these are for metals to be done by Galaxy Metals or whatever on there. You got a comment, Marty?
Yep.
Oh. So looking through these pictures, boy, Marty, you see a lot of crummy ones like this, and you're going as a photographer, gosh, they lower get a higher f-stop. They're probably at f16 and need f22 there. It's the surface of the moon. It's going to be the brightest surface they've ever seen. So, but you can process this. This picture becomes this. Look at that, Marty. Yep. Look at my dark room, my light room techniques, they call it, making this picture. So have some fun with that when you're getting away from your in-laws in your own private office there, wanting something to do. Look at the trash they left on the moon. But I hope you're impressed with that because you can do that. I think that's the lunar rover in the center there. This is on the way after they walk back from there. Yes, Marty, go ahead.
Question from Dean Babcock. How did the astronauts change the magazines used with the Hasselblad cameras?
Uh, Good question, and we'll have Tom Usiak talk about that when he's in town in April. Tommy, there you got a subject to share with us when I have you on there. They have the Hasselblad camera is a very square. Let me get an analogy here. Tell you what, I'll use this frizzy here that Terry White left me. Terry Alford's my late friend. I miss Terry. Uh, if this is the back of the camera, it literally attaches to the back with a hook system and comes off with the push of a button. Now I'm sure it was highly customized for the gloves of an astronaut on the moon, but they could take them off. But you have to put a slide in there. You have to put a slide mechanism. If this is the film, let me do it so people can see. This is the film. This is the camera I'm mating, and there's a slide mechanism in there that you pull out to expose the film. In between there, the film would be in there like this, and so that slide would come out so that the film was exposed, and then you got to put the slide back in there to take the back off. So I'm not sure. All right. Uh, Great question though, Dean. And Tommy Usiak, if you got a short answer there, chime in there. All right, but I hope y'all are mesmerized at what you can do with just the highlight bar. That's a lot of highlight bar. I may have processed it a couple times. You get one and then you go back and do it again. But big difference, huh, Marty? All right, you're like, oh, there's nothing there. Oh yeah, this is one of the last pictures they took out the window. There's the massifs that were globs of lunar material thrown over there from the Mare Imbrium impact 3 billion years earlier. And there it is. All right. All right. So there's a picture. Can't tell if that's Gene looking for the stripe on his arm, thigh, or helmet because that red is the commander. But look at the detail of millions of years of micrometeorites being pulverizing the surface. What's a micrometeorite, Marty asks? Well, go over there to that shelf. Go to the nearest shelf near you and just take your finger like that, and you see a clump of dust there. That's dust motes, like micrometeorites. Now they're all clunked up on your finger. Now you can see them, all right? And that's what micrometeorites are, the dust motes of the solar system. going 30,000 miles an hour without any atmosphere, they churn things up very rapidly. This is a telephoto lens that one of the astronauts used to bring in. I should enhance that picture and maybe spend some time doing that over Christmas. And there is one of the furthest distances they got. All right, that is just about the far distance with a 300 millimeter lens. Boy, does that make the South Massif look incredible there at the area of Descartes. Plus, they didn't land in such a level area there, Marty. That gives you a sense of the landing there. We've got Creek Walker said that as a kid he watched Apollo 17 blast off from his yard. As a 10-year-old boy, Creek Walker Homestead, thank you for joining us today and staying curious. We will have a great day. Come back again. Oh, wow. Flickr Pro's $135 a year. Not sure if it's worth that, Steve, but we'll talk about that later. Here's some of the equipment that they left on the moon. They had a heat flow experiment that didn't go so well in Apollo 16 because John Young tripped over the wires and ripped it out of the station there. You've got, let me look at some of the experiments. Heat flow experiment, lunar surface gravity experiment, the lunar atmospheric composition experiment, LACE, which you may say, well, when they launched off the moon and spewed all that micro meteorite dust that's clumped up now all over the place, how could they tell about the moon's atmosphere? Glad you asked. To ensure it was unaffected by the lunar module's liftoff, the LACE was heated to drive off contamination during the lunar night that followed, and only then was it activated. They also had several surface experiments that had covers on them that were ejected after the launch. But one thing I'm interested in is the Transverse Gravity Experiment, the TGE. It was the first experiment put on the lunar rover. Right, the lunar rover had that and the surface electrical properties experiment, which both were gathering information for future missions. All right, the static electricity of the moon. There's no atmosphere. It's getting pieces of the sun rain down on it constantly without a filter. So these were some of the firsts of the program there. Look at that beautiful panorama. The mission was the longest moon landing, the longest total extravehicular activities, 3 moonwalks, 22 hours. They brought back the largest lunar sample. We'll talk about that in a minute. Well, 17 pounds, something that Gino saw at the last minute and says, I'm going to go over there and get that, Jack. And he grabbed a 17-pound chunk of rock that was very instrumental in figuring out where the moon came from and did it have a liquid core inside of it, because it does not now. And at 75, Ron Evans did the most lunar orbits, and that will stand for the test of time for a long time, I think. Let's see here. I always have other sources in Wikipedia that I find things. Oh yeah, did you know 5 mice were taken to the moon? They were carried not to the surface of the moon. They were in the lunar module. I mean the command module. And these 5 mice were for a biological cosmic ray experiment. That was what they wanted to figure out, was exposure to cosmic rays. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But 4 males and 1 female. Unofficially, according to Cernan, they called them Fee, Fi, Fo, and Fum and Fooey. Fee, Fi, Fo, Fum, and Fooey. And 1 died, 4 survived, and they gave us some info on things. But what the astronauts had been experiencing is flashes of light, streaks of light when in their eyes there. Marty, why don't we get to Martin's question there?
You're asking for Martin's question, right?
Yeah, Martin.
Yeah. There were photos of the Command Module America below the Lunar Module Challenger. Was the Command Module America closer to the lunar surface than the Apollo 15 Command Module Endeavour, which is sighted to achieve the lowest altitude?
Don't know for sure. Maybe Steve knows that off the top of his head. But yeah, if it says 15, Endeavor was never got it at the lowest altitude, that would make sense because 15 or 16 would be doing reconnaissance. All right. And 16 might not have been. Maybe they after 15, because Al Warden really did a good job over this Descartes area. All right. Because the as I showed you, the 15 landed up also that high of a latitude above the equator, much higher. So he had an opportunity to see this site many times on there. Yeah, Dean Babcock, I'm with you. 18, 19, and 20. Uh, if it hadn't been canceled. Martin, thank you for the question. There are pictures of the CM below the Lunar Module Challenger when it departed. Um, uh, it was higher up at about 60, 55 miles, something like that. But thanks for watching. Steve Jokums adds that the 15 had bruised fingernails because of the hand stress. Gene Cernan, I've heard him talk on documentaries. His fingertips were raw, bleeding. All right, took months to heal from grabbing the inside of those gloves and it rubbing his fingertips raw. And I think you that again have been in snowball fights would understand that. Okay, I think my fingertips have been bleeding a couple of times, plastering the neighbors in a snowball fight back when I was growing up. And Dean Babcock mentions 18, 19, and 20 that had sites chosen. Harrison Schmitt wanted to land on the back side of the moon. He wanted to bring back material from then if we were just going to do 6 landings. He said, well, let's go to the back side of the moon. But Chris Kraft couldn't get the money together for the communications satellite that would be needed to orbit the moon or at a Lagrange point and stay there to relay information from the back side of the moon. So Tommy Usiak says on that question of the Hasselblad, the film was exposed with a dark slide was put in the slide and that allowed the magazine changing. Yeah. But with those gloves, Tommy, and all the magazines were preloaded in Houston, and that's right. And they're just like a little box that attaches to another box with a lens on it. So, all right, there is Harrison Schmitt. You can see his face there a little bit with the visor up. There's some other ones better on there. Give you an idea of the whole rig there that they had. Had their own antenna talking to Earth, S-band antenna for data transmission. And you'll find cool pictures like this on that Flickr. Marty, that's like an artist look at the moon. All right, that's obviously Jack Schmitt put that camera. I see the up on the top there, the stripe. They took black and white film with them, but he took a selfie of himself inside uh, the faceplate of Cernan. And I would just be so tempted, Marty, and Tom Usiak, are you with me on this? Why didn't he say, hey, Gino, lift up your faceplate there a second. Let me get a picture of you against that rock with your face. Very few of them took their faceplate up. Now, there is a good picture of Neil Armstrong taken from the movie film of him with his faceplate raised up when a few minutes after he got on the moon. I love that one. Again, an innocuous picture, but it's on the friggin' moon. And there you see someone had dug in with they had a hammer. I wish I'd asked Jack Schmitt in the 3 times I hung out with him, did he take his Geology 101 hammer with him, Marty? I know geologists, first thing they do in 101 is buy a hammer, just like in camera photography 101. You buy a camera and I think the real camera of the day for and Tom Usiak will take you back to that was that Pentax K1000 was the camera of choice, Pentax K1000 for camera classes. And so they had a 101 hammer that they got, and I wonder if Jack took that to the moon. He does have his visor up a few times on there, Tom. Again, pulverized by millions and several billions of years. This has all been laying there undisturbed. Some of this from the ejecta from that Mare Imbrium dark area. Well, they got out. Oh, I didn't talk about the flash of the eye phenomenon. I'll do that next. Um, when they got out on the first EVA, uh, where's my EVA footage here? My EVA stories here. First EVA, with his hammer, Gino struck the rear fender extension, accidentally breaking it off. A similar incident occurred on Apollo 16 as John Young walked around and ran into it. Although not mission critical, it threw a rooster tail up on these astronauts and just covered them with dirt, with lunar dirt. So they had a fix because Young had already done it. So when they started their second EVA, that was the first thing they did. They took some maps and some other things and just simple, you got it, duct tape. That's duct tape on there, good old duct tape. So that is the overnight fix there, and they didn't have a problem with that on the next two EVAs. So the astronauts were at the extremity of their walk back limit on EVA number 2. Okay. A safety constraint meant to ensure that they could walk back to the limb if, whatever reason, the rover failed. They also had a buddy system vent where if one's backpack that what's the backpack called, Marty? The life support system, personal life support system, PLSS. If one of theirs failed, the other one could hook his in and they could share it. There's a buddy system there with about 3 feet of vacuum hose, probably from Hoover, that they adapted for that. So second EVA was when they went the farthest away, and we'll tell you what that is here at the end of the show. Got any more guesses? That's our question. How far away was this walk?
Got a question from Dave Stange.
Yeah, go ahead, Marty.
Yeah, Dave Stange is asking, did he throw his hammer before he went back and after their last EVA?
I don't know. I do know that on 15, you're all going to remember, David Scott used his hammer in a feather, falcon feather, because that was the lunar module number 10, and he dropped them in the atmosphere, the atmosphere, 1/6 gravity, no atmosphere, and a falcon feather and a lunar hammer weighing 3 pounds fell at the same time, hit the ground at the same time, proving that Galileo was right in thinking that if you didn't have atmospheric resistance. The third moonwalk and last in the history of mankind started at 5:25 p.m. on December 13th, 1872. They're getting ready for it right now, okay? And you can go to that by going Apollo. Yeah, I didn't show that slide up there. I want to show the Apollo real time. Go to it right now, and you'll see some live footage of them on the moon. Of course, anytime you can watch that, or also YouTube has all kinds and hours of their moonwalks up there. They're getting tired. They've been inside of those spacesuits for 2 days. I think they slept in them. They were so nasty, covered from head to toe with the lunar dust that's so fine, finer than talcum powder. Okay, and we will tell you how far away they walked there in just a minute. So they get out from this station. That is Schmidt. He starts talking on the phone, on the radio, as Gene's taking this picture. I see orange soil. I see orange soil. Well, it didn't show up in the pictures or to the naked eye that far away. And Gene goes, wait for me, wait for me. He's telling the geologist, wait, I got to verify it for you there. I think that's always kind of funny. Of course, they're singing the 1800s, 1900s song from 1880s. Strolling on the park one day in the merry, merry month of May. And Schmidt is singing that. in the merry, merry month of December, he's saying, because he's interposing the words, and Gene's correcting him, saying, no, May, May, it's the merry, merry month of May. But Gino, he's singing December here. And I hear that over and over. And though they were great crewmates, still Gene wished that his buddy, Joe Engel, that was scheduled to go with him, might have been with him there. This is the only mission where none of the people that went to the moon were test pilots. Okay. Joe Engel was an X-15 test pilot there. So, yes, Marty.
Yeah, Doug Forrest is saying yes, he threw the hammer. Cerny told him not to hit the limb.
All right. Thank you, Doug. He's done a lot of research on that. He may be working up a piece of artwork on that. Well, what is this? This is one of the rarest and most scientific finds on the moon. A trocholite. Troctolite is the name of this. A coarse-grained olivine and plagioclase rock that in the valley was brought up as a rake sample. All right. 4.25 billion years old. This dates the beginning of the solar system and when things started getting rocky. All right. But the interesting thing about this is how the magnetic field in the early moon at 4.525 billion year old, we think everything came together 5 billion years, and the sun started burning about 5 billion years ago, and then the planets coalesced out of this primordial cloud that coalesced atoms into substances that we see here. The magnetic field is a key. Did the moon have an early magnetic field? The rocks aren't that magnetic. Okay. A lot of meteors are magnetic to a magnet, but this has some magnetic properties in it that lend to the fact that it wasn't a shock magnetic, but a magnetism caused by a core churning inside the moon. And that's a big deal in solar system physics, astrophysics. So that's one of the most valuable. And of course, Apollo 15 had the Genesis rock. This is older than the Genesis rock, put together by nature 4.25 B with a billion years ago. All right, there's the lunar soil that was orange. Why is it soil orange? It vented out something from inside the moon when all this lunar lava was spewing out. This was a fissure vent, and these orange molecules, these orange dirt there, are glass beads under an electron microscope. Though they look like dirt to us, they're actually glass beads there. And so that was quite an amazing find. The only time we found that during the Apollo program. There is Challenger, which could have been called Heritage just as easily if Gino would have said, yeah, I like Heritage. All right. But let me get that note there of let me see if I can see quickly what Schmidt said on his. He said, something about the challenge. Of course, I'm not going to find it here. Lunar surface. Maybe it's on this page here. Worth the pause to maybe find this. And I'm not going to. Can't find the words of Harrison Schmidt, but it was something like, with this landing, we're challenging the future to come back to Taurus Littrow. All right. I'm sorry, I kept saying Descartes, and it is Taurus Littrow. Descartes is Apollo 16, so I apologize for that. Taurus Littrow is the landing site here, and it is a Friday the 13th on here for me. So, okay. Well, that's we've got what Gino said last on the moon, and we'll share that again. But I got a couple other things to share with you here about this fabulous mission, another panorama. These are actually stitched together, all right, by in a lab. There's not one picture; it's like 3 or 4 put together. They'll love that picture. That you don't see enough of that one. All right. There's the lunar rover and the lunar module in the background there in a black and white photo. They endured very well, particularly the wheels. And there's the liftoff. Oh, that's where it was at. That's the distance it was at when they lifted off from the moon. And they turned the cameras on at Houston, left them on for hours even after the mission. There was the liftoff. That was something that Marty's talked about time and time again. Was there is a single point, all right, called the guillotine, where a lot of wires and even pipes are going through. And then you had 4 areas, Marty. You want to share a little more about that? I'm talking about it, and people are going, yeah, but Marty's right there, Mark. So how many points of explosive things did you have going on there?
4 nuts and bolts. So you had 2 pyros on each nut and bolt, just for redundancy.
Okay. You had a hand in arming those when they were on Earth, correct?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. And the guillotine.
Yeah, just the guillotine, I call it combing it. You have to get the wires and pipes, going straight, so it's not on angles. So I combed, actually it was LEM 3.
And we've done programs on this with a diagram of it, but it's basically 2 chisels on either side of this bundle, right, Marty? Chisels, is that a good word to?
I would say knife.
Knife?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or blades.
So there's over how many pyrotechnics, roughly?
Okay, I think
400 or 4 dozen?
on the LEM itself,
Yeah.
I think.
Well, no, on the descent ascent separation system.
Gosh, Mark, I'm thinking it was 64 total.
Okay, all right.
That's the number.
All right, that's good. Okay, 64 total. Not 400, but 64. Good. And what was the fraction of a second that they had to all activate?
It was milliseconds. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many milliseconds.
Yeah. Yeah, it was instantaneous for sure. And Marty, you said that you often thought about if that hadn't disconnected.
Well, I often thought about had dreams, if you will, about the guillotine not separating, and the ascent stage would lift off and it would just tip over to its side. The guillotine kept the ascent descent together.
Well, not only did it work on the lunar surface 6 times, it certainly worked on Apollo 13 and saved the lives of those guys coming back. Well, it didn't have to. It didn't have to work for that. But anyway, thank you, Marty, for sharing that with us there. Oh, let me show you my bald spot here while I get something there real quick because I'm going to need it. There. The liftoff, just amazing pictures. There's the picture before docking. Our last views, the ascent engine there, bell you see in there, the door nicely shut, and all of the communication devices there. And there's the command module, America in orbit with Ron Evans there. So beautiful with that shiny cone reflecting the Earth's the moon's horizon in it there. And I will mention, because you see the open panel on the back, that's the SIM bay, scientific instrument bay, where Ron Evans did a trans-Earth spacewalk to retrieve the film. Once again, they have canisters of film there. You'll see him having a canister in his hand. Excuse me. That's what he's going back there to get, is this canister of film. Not this specific 35 millimeter one. It was, I think, probably 70 millimeters, but that's what they did. There's where it looks. All right. From the orbit. Again, the lunar module is just vacant there. All of these sites have been claimed as historic sites by the U.S. Congress. I think they tried to do something in the United Nations so that so SpaceX or Blue Origin can't go up there and bring back part of that or bring the whole thing back. They bring the whole thing back in a Starship, I'm sure, which they might one day. That'd be cool to see. We'll never see it, Marty, but our great grandkids might on there. So, but that's it. I remember this piece right here. Seeing that laying on the lunar surface and some other pictures we've got. And there is a beautiful photograph of Gene Cernan on the surface of the moon. All right, classic that has been mimicked by Chris Calley. Chris Calley took that picture and with a little bit of artistic embellishment there, put the earth in the background there, and Chris's own style to it. He's got the crink and the flag just right, and how dirty they look. And there's Ron Woods as we give a tribute to three of our supporting astronauts here to end our program and end our week here on December 13th as these astronauts are getting ready to exit the lunar module Challenger, the 12th one, the number 12 on the assembly line of Grumman, getting ready to do their, and I'm going to be watching it as I'm doing my work and so forth around the museum the rest of the day here. So beautiful, beautiful, Ronnie, how you depicted that. And there's Chris Calley, master of the pencil, his tribute to Apollo 17 and the last footprints on the moon with the lunar rover in the back. As it would be there, the flag is not that close to the lunar rover, but when you're an artist, you can do that. Chris Calley. There's Ron Woods again. Sorry, it's so small. I meant to find a larger picture and didn't. It's pixelated out there. Looks better like that. That's a watercolor that Ron Woods done. Ron Woods was a suit tech in the Apollo era for Apollo 8 and 10, 11, and these guys actually put the suits on, and then he worked the suit room in the shuttle era. Here is Doug Forrest. Doug Forrest's beautiful image there of a Apollo astronaut going down the ladder. I really like that, Doug, because I talk a lot. I used to say, Marty, did you ever go up and down the ladder? Marty, did you ever go up and down the ladder? On that UCAC microphone. Tell us.
No, and nobody did.
Why, Marty?
No, it was built for 1/6 gravity, 1/16. So we would kind of
so it was pretty fragile, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was it like probably like a pool, aluminum pool ladder in many respects, is what I've gathered, Marty.
Yeah, that's fairly accurate.
Uh-huh. All right. Great work. A lot of tedious pencil work there. That is a pencil drawing, folks. And there's another one by Doug Forrest, his lunar module in his command module in lunar orbit with the Earth. Beautiful, Doug. And here's how to get a hold of those three gentlemen. Okay, if you'd like to buy their fabulous work of art. Doug specifically, he's in Los Angeles area, works in the industry out there of CG and all that, and told me he's not too far from Pasadena. Marty, when we go out there and see Endeavor, you know what he told me? He doesn't have a couch. No, you've got a couch, okay?
He has floor.
Yeah, you got a floor and you've got a Walmart nearby, and I'll get a couch. I'll inflate a couch and set it there, Doug. But no, we love him and his wife, and have been to Shuttle Fest before. Chris Calley at chriscalleyspaceart.com, tremendous partner and my chairman of Shuttle Fest coming up in April. And Ron Woods, you can find his stuff on novaspace.com. And I'm going to try to have all of their stuff sometime early next year on our website at the American Space Museum, as we're going to open up our website store there a little bit. So, yeah, Dean, they are outstanding pieces of art there. And so screen grab this, folks, and solicit these people. They'd all appreciate a little extra walk around money Christmas time that I call wham. Need a little wham there, Doug, Ron, and Chris. I'm trying to help you out there. This is to end the program here with another fabulous masterpiece by Chris Calley. He's made his sky a lot like his dad's sky in the Apollo 17 launch there. And where am I at? Oh, yes, I want to tell you the story to end the program about the lunar boots of the last worn objects to touch another world are the lunar boots of Apollo 17, the last Apollo landing, all right? And I got this from a story from somewhere. And as we look at Ron Woods's picture of the lunar boots, and some may be laying there like that. As all of the previous 5 missions threw their shoes out with their PLSS life support packs, as they had put their helmets on and were sucking their life energy off of the lunar module hoses there. So none of the boots were brought back. Now they wore booties on the way back apparently, and they also had to wear their lunar suits because that was the only suit they had on board for reentry. But Gene Cernan unilaterally made the decision to, hey Jack, let's bring our boots back. All right, they've never brought boots back. We're just going to bring them back. We got room for them. We know they're not that heavy. All right, we'll throw another food bag out that we didn't eat or something to compensate for it. So instead of tossing their shoes, they brought them back. And we're going to show you pictures of those as we're imagining boots on the surface of the moon and touching the moon's surface. The silicone soles, here's how they were made. The silicone soles you see there were touched the lunar surface. They were worried about conducting heat. The insoles had a combination of fiberglass and Teflon, similar to the outer layer of the spacesuit. The inner soles were lined on the inside with Teflon coated beta cloth to create a fire resistant encapsulement for the feet. Between the inner and outer layers of beta cloth were alternating layers of aluminized mylar. Think about mylar balloons at Christmas, at birthday time. Non-woven Dacron and beta Marquesti Kapton, a laminated film. These layers added thermal protection but formed a penetration layer of the boot. All right. So the outer layer was penetration against abrasion. That silvery gray covering on the top up there is called Chromel R. It is a high chromium content stainless steel fabric that is woven from steel threads. All right. See it on there, how beautiful that is, Marty? In that silver, okay? In $1968, the fabric of this silver fabric cost $2,500 a yard. That is $20,000 a yard today for a 3-foot piece, 3 foot by 3 foot. All right. $20,000 a square yard. Very expensive. So they made judicious use of it. That's the patch that's on the middle of the back of the moonwalkers, so that the base of the backpacks rubbing against it wouldn't rub into the moon suit. That was where they spent a full yard or more on each one. And they put some on the EVA gloves, and so the protection had to go there. So the feet needed this, all right? So Cernan maintained that it was a last-minute decision to bring the boots back, and it was his decision. Historically now, people stand in awe of these boots that were on the moon. Number one, soil on the moon is so fine that talcum powder is like 10 times coarser than what they found of the micrometeorite beat up lunar regolith. That's what the soil is called, regolith. The gray you see there, Marty, is actual moon dirt that's in there. But it is so embedded that the Smithsonian technicians could not get it out. All right. And they didn't want to try to get it out. The material doesn't merely, soil doesn't merely sit on top of things. It actually embeds itself. It hooks on itself because they're like diatoms with sharp edges on them, and they embed themselves in everything. A big problem going back to the moon. Could be a big problem with respiration, of breathing that in your lungs. The lunar dust that you see on the blue silicone could not be brushed off even if they tried on the blue silicone. They couldn't wash it off with anything. All right. Now, using a laboratory microscope, scientists 50 years later, Dean Babcock, the new technology, have found deep fibers in the Teflon-coated fiberglass fabric that covers the surface spacesuits. Even more remarkably, the material scientists have examined the Chromel R fabric of Harrison Schmidt's boots, shown here, and this is the Chromel, $20,000 a square yard, yard. They've seen in there that the lunar dust has gone far into eroding the fabric of the very fibers of this fabric. All right. So the stainless steel fibers are chewed up a little bit by the lunar surface and whatever he was doing. Of course, he's moving his feet, so they're moving in there and doing damage. So it turns out that Cernan's ad hoc decision to bring back his overshoes were probably the greatest impact on design of the Artemis suits. And this is a very grateful thing for the technicians today to learn about the Artemis suits there and how they perform, how they're going to perform on the moon one day on there. So, did I grab that? Yes, I got that here. So, oh, there's Schmidt's words on the moon, and there's Cernan's words on the moon. So, on this Friday the 13th, I pulled it off. All right, and isn't that beautiful, Marty? Now we've seen some replicas. We've seen some actual lunar boots. We had one that we sold here at the museum through our auctions. One boot sold for $62,000, and it was a training boot. All right, but they're very interesting when you see up close, and they are very lightweight, aren't they, Marty? We have a replica here. The silicone's the heavy part of it. So here, Chris Callie. Beautiful montage, brother, that you've done there to take us out today. But first, Marty, take it away on that UCF family microphone.
Okay, again, the question was, what is the furthest distance Gene and Jack drove from lunar module number 12 named Challenger? And Steve Holcomb said 7.6 kilometers, which is 4.7 miles. And Dave Stange said less than 5 miles. Gary Jarrell, 4.5 miles, and Dean Babcock, 4.5 miles, and our answer is 4.7 miles. But 4.5 and 4 is pretty darn close.
That's right. But good job for you, Steve Jokins. He's got a photographic memory, United Laboratories man, so I know he's very detail-oriented. And he sent me some research on the hold-down bolts on the Saturn V rocket. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk to Gary Gerald. We're going to talk to you about that, Gary. I'll bet he's got an idea what that looks like. So we'll have Gary on next week, I hope, and talk about several things. So thank you all for watching today. I was a lot long-winded. You know what? No apologies, because 6 times a year we can celebrate man being on the surface of the moon. And today we're celebrating the last time. Go ahead, Marty.
Mark, are you saying Gary Gerald's going to be here next week? Or you got some...
Gary...
Algar.
Okay,
that's better.
Gary Gerald? Sorry, he was saying, oh, and that's Donnie about that, if we can go. Thank you. 2 of my favorite Garys. Gary Allgaier, our NASA mechanical engineer. Gary Allgaier, we'll have you in there. Gary Gerald, and you and your wife, Donnie, I hope you have a fabulous holiday up there in Collins, Georgia, and I'll get up there one day, I promise. So to end the program here with some, thank you for catching that, Marty. As I had his wife mad at me. You didn't tell me we were going there, but they do have friends here. Look at that beautiful montage that sums up the 6 successful landings in 3 years. So incredible. And here we are spinning our feet with this Artemis program that the Orion spacecraft's been in development 12 years. Well, here's how we ended 52 years ago, thinking that it would just be a decade or 2 before we return. Harrison Schmitt, after he stepped on the moon at the beginning of his first 22 hours on the surface, he said, quote, "I think the next generation ought to accept this as a challenge. Let's see them leave footprints like these." That's pretty, and yet it hasn't happened in 52 years. And Harrison Schmitt, God bless you, he's 89 years old in great health and still spreading the word out there that we don't have it managed right, is his message. We gotta, and we'll get it managed by private companies, I guarantee you there, Mr. Schmitt, Dr. Schmitt. And then here's what Gene's famous last words on the moon were. "I'm on the surface, and as I take man's last step from the surface, back home for some time to come, but we believe not too long in the future, I'd just like to say what I believe history will record, that America's challenge of today has forged man's destiny of tomorrow. And as we leave the moon at Taurus Litro, we leave as we came, and God willing, as we shall return, with peace and good hope for all mankind. Godspeed the crew of Apollo 17. And that ends the chapter today, December 13th, 1972. And you can watch the last 7 hours on the moon on YouTube. Go to live Apollo real time, Apollo 17 real time, and enjoy it like I am the rest of the day. And be sad when I see them, Gino, say those words sometime around midnight tonight, probably. So thank you all for watching today. I appreciate everybody. Red Ray's on there, new viewer, Creek Walker, Homestead, Mitch Rothman. Thanks to you, buddy, spreading the Apollo word on your fabulous Facebook ManSpace, your site ManSpace. Nick Sedler, Bill Whiting. Hope you and your wife ate 2 desserts today. They watch while they eat, and I was that long that you probably had 2 desserts. Carlton Bailey, be in touch with you this weekend. Doug Forrest, pick up and go to Apollo Arts and get some of Doug's great work there. Or rewind there, and we put their link to our good friend Chris Calley, Doug Forrest, and of course Ron Woods. Gary Gerald, Tom Usiak, Dean Babcock, Steve Jokums, my daughter Jessie, and my granddaughters McKinley and Macy will be FaceTiming you guys there. So, and Godspeed you all out there as the holidays converge upon us. Next week will be quite hectic for everybody. And then we got the big Christmas week on a Wednesday. We are going to close Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Christmas week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, New Year's week, and not do Stay Curiouses. We will reprise some things on Facebook, some of the old shows, and maybe a YouTube show or something if Marty feels up to doing it. But we need a little break. We've had a really traumatic year, losing our wonderful director, Karen Conklin, to cancer in August. But we've righted the ship, and the rudders are and going full steam ahead in the right direction, thanks to Gabriel Rothblatt, our executive director, and I am doing the day-to-day operations as the museum director, with great people on our board and on our volunteer staff like Marty Winkle. Thank you, Marty, for all you do at the museum. We'll be getting teary-eyed and all tomorrow or next week as we sign out for the year. But we're so grateful to those of you that watch and take your time to watch and contribute and have such intelligent questions on a show like today. So go back and look at the 3 guests that we had. Robert Granath was awesome, public affairs officer. We had on Wednesday Daryl Higginbotham. He was the architect of the hold down joints holding 7 million pounds of thrust on the Saturn V rocket until it was time to release them. And then, of course, our good friend Bert Dicht was here and did a reprise of 2025 yesterday. So if you missed them, go to YouTube and check them out. So until next week, I'm Mark Marquette saying, I can't wait to see you in our museum to bridge the space between us.